how many people are growing some heat-loving things left over from fall, such as tomatoes, eggplants, peppers? Okay, so let's talk about making sure that those survive the cold nights. So if you have things in the garden planted from fall or even from maybe summertime, right now is an ideal time to get some more compost added and some more mulch to insulate the soil temperature for them. Also, it's going to add more nutrients, and it's going to just to protect the soil from getting really, really cold at night. This is just a really basic landscape mulch. It's very, very inexpensive. If you haven't already mulched your garden, I'm going to encourage you to do that before it gets cold. A couple of inches at the most is all you need. Just make sure it's evenly spread out over areas where you've already had compost applied. But right now is the ideal time to do that before planting new winter veggies as well. So 2 to 3 inches of compost and then another layer of mulch is what you're looking for. Move your drip tapes back before applying that, and then you can put your drip tapes back over on top of the mulch. Don't make the mistake of covering up your drip tapes because they can get clogged if you do that. So make sure that they're on the top of the soil. We have a lot more things to look forward to growing right now too. Everybody here using a planting calendar? Okay, this is a really nice illustrated calendar provided by Angela, Growing in the Garden. She just does a fabulous job with her social media, and she takes these really beautiful pictures of things that she's harvested from her garden and then puts it in a calendar for you that's easy to read. So this will show you if it can be planted by a transplant or by a seed. And right now, by the way, is the proper time to be seeding, direct sowing all of your root veggies. So that's the only thing really that you want to grow by seed, in my opinion, this time of year, other than say spinach and lettuce does really fabulous if you direct sow it by seed too. But that's going to include things such as beets, carrots, turnips, radishes. Am I missing parsnips? All of the root veggies can go directly sown into the garden right now. And sometimes we get overly excited. We're going to seed them really close together. Once they've germinated, we want to go back through and make sure that we thin them out so that they can become their mature size. And mature size means that whatever size you want it to grow into. So say for instance you want to grow radishes. Well, on an average, a radish is usually, more than an inch in diameter, right? So we want to thin them the space appropriate to allow that vegetable to grow into its mature size. If you've ever tried to grow carrots before in the past and they come out real spindly and weak and skinny, it's probably because you made the mistake of not thinning them back out after they were seeded. So go through, right now is the perfect time to go through and thin them out. Make sure that they have room to grow. Does that make sense? It's Angela, Growing in the Garden. We have it for sale in the barn. You can also access it from her socials. We have it for sale, and there is a calendar that's provided for free by the Maricopa County Extension Office. It's the Master Gardener's Calendar. You can download the PDF online for free. Just Google Maricopa County Planting Guideline. Yeah, and that one is in a chart form, really easy to read as well. They also have a flower calendar for you available. Okay, so we've got some cold tolerant veggies on this side of the garden. I've got a mixture of brassica planted over here. We've also got some herbs incorporated, and I've got some things hanging on from the summertime. Everybody knows what this is? Nothing kills basil. So basil is going to try and live and live and live and live and live until we have a couple of extremely cold nights. That will usually wipe out basil if it hasn't already. Anybody here still have basil in their garden from summer? Yeah. Okay, so we used to have nothing but basil on this side. So we took the decision to finally get rid of it. It did its job, it served its purpose, it attracted our pollinators in. It also works as a really natural deterrent to keep bad bugs away. However, it can be very space consuming, and you can only consume so much basil before you get sick of it, right? So right now is the ideal time to make the decision on whether or not you want to keep the basil around until the frost kills it. This on this side, again, is more basil. We've got it as a companion plant towards our tomatoes, which we will keep throughout the winter months, and I'm going to show you how to protect those with a frost cloth. But the basil, I'm going to thin out to a minimum size. The gomphrena, this is a heat-loving amaranth-related flower, is already starting to decline. Anything that thrives in 110 degree weather in the full sun does not like our winter months. So just assume that it's not going to make it much longer. When you start to see leaves declining, yellowing, curling up, browning, anything like that, it's a good indication that it's time to go ahead and pull it, even if it's still blooming. Up to you on whether or not you want it to, go all the way through. But I personally want more room to grow things like broccoli, cauliflower, lettuce, spinach, snap peas. All of that stuff can go into the garden now. So right now is a great time to go ahead and pull that, and then you're going to make some space for your broccoli, for instance, that can get, a couple of feet tall and a couple of feet wide. Yes?
Your gumfrey that you say you're going to pull here, are you going to try to save seeds as well?
You absolutely can. I love that you brought that up. You should always be saving seed, especially on the easy to save seed flowers. Gomphrena happens to be one of them. When it goes to seed, the little poof ball that it once was, like this, turns into this. When it's starting to reproduce, the seeds want to separate from the flower. That's a good indicator that it's now time to go ahead and collect those seeds. Now, this one hasn't fully matured into seed production yet, but it will, especially once it's removed from its life source, from the plant that it's growing on. So what you'll do is you'll deadhead it, is what it's actually called, and you can set these out on a flat surface with something to absorb moisture, such as a burlap or a paper towel or whatever it may be. In the sun is ideal, or in a dry location, avoiding moisture. Wait until the color has completely faded and it's turned this pale color. See, it's kind of creamy pale color. There's no more pink left. Then you know the seed has now fully matured. You simply just take it apart, and the seeds are the petals. Right in there is your seed. Yeah. So very, very easy to save seed on Gomphrena, and I'm really happy that you brought that up, because again, another one that you should be saving seed on is our good old friend marigold. I always tease and I always make fun, because I say to my customers, I don't know why we always run out of marigolds when it's so easy to save seed. We'll keep selling them to y'all, but you should really be saving your seed. This is a dried flower that I just deadheaded off that marigold, and those little brown sticks are seeds. Look how many you get from one flower. That is a ton of seed. Now, if you go out into your garden and you deadhead your marigold regularly, this, for instance, will provide up to 40 seeds. Do the math on that. So start saving the seed. Get in the habit of start saving the seeds. Again, you're going to let them dry out completely before storing them. And then after they've dried out completely, you can put them in a paper envelope, for instance, mark the year on it. Maybe mark the color of the marigold or the size that it was if you're not sure of the variety, so that way you know if it's a compacted version or a really tall one. Some of them can get really tall. These are the African marigolds that we love, with the big poof balls. But sometimes this can be a little obnoxiously large for some smaller spaces. You want something more compact like this one. This is a Mexican or a French marigold. We've got a couple different varieties. Up to a few years on marigolds, yeah. They have a really high germination rate, especially if it was harvested from your garden. Anything, by the way, that you save seed from in your own garden is going to have a higher germination rate than something you bought from another climate zone. So when you're sourcing seeds, if you're buying a seed, for instance, that was grown in Missouri, the germination rate tends to be a little bit less than if you buy a local seed here from our climate zone. Zone 9B is where you're at, if you didn't know that. And seed packets generally are the complete opposite of what we have, what we follow here in our low desert climate. So if it says to sow it in the spring, that usually means fall here in Phoenix. Because if y'all have lived here before, you know spring doesn't last long. It goes from cold to hot. We have about 4 weeks of really nice weather. We're all excited that it's not freezing anymore. We go from wearing hoodies to tank tops and putting the sunscreen and the hats back on as soon as it's end of March. It's hot. So with that being said too, your shade structure that you put up end of March, April, 50% shade screen is what we do, what we apply to protect our plants from burning. That can come down now if you would like it to come down to increase the speed of your brassicas. So say for instance you planted some broccoli 4 or 6 weeks ago when it was safe to do that, and you haven't seen much growth on it yet. They're just little baby plants still. It may be because they're not getting enough sunlight. I will tell you that they grow extremely slow if they have too much shade. That goes for all winter veggies. So for instance, we have 50% shade screen above us. We also have a banner and trees. So when we put the shade structure up, it wasn't planned that the trees were going to be growing as fast as they did. And we also have the banner there. So this garden gets really low hours of sun, and it struggles. It struggles in the winter. The summer, no big deal. We can grow whatever we want here. It looks beautiful. Everybody walks over here. They're so impressed that we have things growing in the middle of August. It's because we have so much shade. But in the winter, it can really slow things down. So think about that in your own personal space when you're at home. If it's convenient for you to remove your shade screen, then by all means you should, especially if you have the house or the tree, for instance, in the way and it's giving it double shade. And then you'll just put that back up when it gets uncomfortably hot again. So up to you. We leave ours up year round. It stays up year round. And it's filtered 50% all day, but they don't have a tree and shade. So everything tends to grow a little bit faster in the field than it does over here in the raised bed. And if you look over here, we did put a new Vigo bed in recently. It's been there a little under a year. We bought it for the primary reason to see what you guys are experiencing at home. Anybody here have a Vigo bed? It's a galvanized steel bed. Yeah, the new modern modular design raised beds. They're really easy to install. And that one gets a lot of sun. And over there, those veggies are growing double the speed that these are here in the full shade. So just to give you an idea of how fast things can grow if they're getting more sun. Ideally, what the goal is 6 hours of morning sun is what you want your brassicas to receive. So that's going to be your kale, your broccoli, your cauliflower, cabbages. Cabbages are one of the slowest growing if they don't get enough sun. They will take many, many months to mature, and Brussels sprout is the other one. Cora and I love Brussels sprouts. We're probably the only people that really eat them in large quantity. And we get so impatient because, you know, it's rolling around April, May, I think last year is when we finally harvested them. It was May, it was hot, yeah, and we planted them in October to give you an idea. And it's because we had them growing under 50% shade. If you grow them in the full sun in the winter and you prune them correctly by removing their lower foliage, that's going to direct energy into producing those sprouts faster for you, then you're going to have a much quicker result. So just some things to consider when you're choosing the locations in your garden for brassicas. Also, they get big, so keep that in mind. We're going to provide a gift box for you today. You're going to get 4 free starts and some worm castings. Everybody here know what worm castings are? Okay, it is a fancy word for worm poop if you don't know. We love worm castings here at the Worm Farm, and it is our favorite way to fertilize the vegetable garden. It's already included in your raised bed mix, so if you already filled up your boxes with raised bed mix, it's got it in there, but it's never a bad idea to go ahead and apply some each time you plant a new crop. We like to go ahead and sprinkle it in, especially on our really heavy feeders. Heavy feeders, anything that's gonna, eat up all the nutrients in the soil pretty quickly. So you're gonna get that in your gift box today. And then we're also providing you a broccoli plant. This is what the baby broccoli looks like. You guys growing broccoli yet?
The birds ate mine.
Oh. Welcome to our life. Cora and I were just cursing a little bit ago about the birds came and ate a whole row of, what did you plant, collards? Napa cabbage and some dahlias, and we're just bummed about it. Yeah, it's like, we try to coexist with the birds, but oh, they're frustrating. They're frustrating, right? There is. So see the fabric. If you stand up and you look over here, and I'm going to take you guys out into the field too, so you'll have a closer look. But that fabric right there is called tulle. It's the fabric that's used in, poofy dresses and things like that. You can get it at a fabric store. That works fantastic in deterring birds. It works a little bit better and it's safer than bird netting, for instance. Bird netting, of course, will work. If you've built a structure up around your garden such as this, probably not, as high as this, but say for your shade screen, you could simply drop some netting down on the sides if you wanted to keep the birds out that way. I think that we got sick of pulling the dead birds out of it, honestly, and also, yeah, it works, but that's no fun. And also just it's kind of a hassle pulling the wheelbarrows and all the equipment and stuff that we're running in and out of the gardens if there's a bunch of netting around. So we only use it if we have to. The tool is a little bit safer of an option. Or the waste baskets upside down.
Somebody told me pinwheels. I have pinwheels at my yard.
Yeah, so,
Spin and
yeah.
I don't know, I put them all in my yard.
Go turn on the wave dancer, please. So Cora's going to show you our new friend that we've introduced to the garden. Works pretty good. You guys all drive down like Main Street or something, you see the big characters that are getting your attention to pull over. Wave dancers. Works great. Works great. See it going? Now I will tell you though that they are smart creatures, and they learn after it's been there for a 48-hour period that it's not a human being, and then they get real confident and they'll come in. So I tell Cora and my other team members that we need to move it periodically to trick them, right? But with the pinwheels, the other thing that you could use in addition to that is something called flash tape. You can get it at any big box store. It's the same material. It's got that metallic, real shiny, and it's in a roll, and you could attach that to the corners or the areas where you're seeing a lot of birds. And just try to be present. And I know it's hard. We're busy people. We sleep, you know, things happen where we can't be in the garden 24 hours a day. But the more presence that you are in your garden, and the more time that you spend in the garden, and the scareder that they will become, and they'll stay away. And there's also, I know this seems strange, but there's ways to keep them happy and content so that they don't eat your food by providing a hydration station for them. So you're going to walk through the gardens here in a few minutes, and we'll point out some totes of water that we have out there, and it's simply to keep our pollinators and birds hydrated. It doesn't help 100%, but it slows it down, because usually 80% of the time they're just thirsty, especially in the hot months. I will say in the summer months, they will drink from the water before they'll go and harvest our tomatoes if it's available for them. So something to consider. They do become picky, and they won't drink the water if it's dirty or if it's been sitting there for a few days. So we have to, from time to time, switch it for them, change it out. And a bird bath, of course, is the old school way of just providing hydration for the birds and keeping them off of your garden plants. So just a couple little helpful tips that actually work. So things like that, you know, I'm not saying that it's going to work 100%, but it helps, right? I do. So it's dependent on the depths of your bed. Now this one is 32 inches, about 3 feet tall. It's filled halfway up with mulch. The other half consists of compost and mix. We run it every other day for 10 minutes. That's enough moisture for this bed. Your bed, if it's more shallow, may need less water, and it also depends on how many gallons per hour it disperses. So all of those things are to be considered. What type of drip system do you use?
I don't have drip system.
Yeah, so every other day for 10 minutes is what I'm going to recommend to you. You may need to play with it a little bit. My favorite way to tell whether or not the soil has dried out is by sticking my finger in the soil. And all the way down to the knuckle is where you go, right here. If you pull out moisture underneath your fingernail, that's enough moisture. If it's still dry down there, not enough. Or if it's soggy wet down there, then it's too much. We never want our garden soggy wet, ever, but we never want it to dry completely out either, to the point where there's no soil sticking to our finger at all.
Is that how you say it?
Oya? Oyas work fantastic in containers. They're not my favorite in raised beds because it doesn't disperse evenly enough in a large space. If you put an Oya in the garden, you plant your plants directly around it, it will water those plants properly, but it will not have enough water source to get to the end of the bed. So you would need several. But I love them in round containers, such as whiskey barrels, wine barrels, things like that. They're fantastic, except for when it's 110 degrees out. When it's summertime, you will need to supplement water on top. Yeah, in addition to the Oya, but they're great. I love them, yeah. We just don't have them in here because it's just not enough water. So we have drip system in here. It runs, again, I'll go over that, every other day, 10 minutes. That's in a raised bed with a lot of organic matter. The field garden runs every day. We've got a couple different areas. On our newly planted brassicas, that one runs what, 15? 20? Okay, 10 to 15 minutes every day. Our pollinator garden right behind you with all those fabulous blooming flowers and herbs, that one runs every other day for 20. Our field garden up in the top, we've got an old cover crop garden up there. Every other day? Yeah. Okay, every other day for 15. So it kind of just depends on what you're growing. So, but as you can see, that's half of what we water in the summer. Come here in the summer, it's every day 30 minutes, every day 30 minutes. That doesn't change, especially on our field. This though, it's just every day instead of every other day, because this holds on to moisture longer. It has the ability to stay wet for a longer period of time now that the soil temperature has finally dropped. Do you guys know how to determine what your soil temperature is? Yes.
So why the conflicting information about the watering, the drip lines being on top of the soil versus underneath the soil to water the roots?
So they tend to get clogged.
Okay.
If you cover them up with soil
Yeah.
and mulch,
Okay.
the emitters will get clogged.
Okay.
And it won't happen right away.
Right.
But you don't want to find out the hard way
Right.
that it's been clogged for a long time and you didn't know it.
Okay, so soaker hoses and that sort of thing, which is what the original recommendation was before what we read, did our research, that would also get clogged, do you think, or what are your thoughts?
After time it will, especially because we have hard water here and there's already a calcium that will build up on the outside of a soaker hose. In addition to that, with the mulch and the compost and all the organic matter sticking to it, it won't take long. As little as 6 weeks, it will become so clogged that it will disperse half of the water that it should be. The emitter holes on these drip tapes is pretty small. So Cora and I regularly have to go out and reinforce those holes from time to time, and they're on the top of the organic matter out there, and they still get clogged because we use nasty SRP water to water the gardens. We filter it in these tanks right here, but to keep the farm sustainable, to water gardens this size and the food forest this size, you know, we're growing acres of food here. It would cost us a fortune if we were using city water. So we use the SRP canal water. It's really dirty water. It's really murky and it clogs our drip tapes pretty quickly. So we do go through pretty regularly and reinforce those holes on our drip tapes. It's also a good idea to get in the habit of flushing them from time to time. If you think something's wrong, always assume that there is. If you have a gut feeling that the garden's not getting enough water or too much water, there may be an issue with your irrigation. It's always okay to assume that there's something wrong and go double check it. The best way to flush it is to take the end caps off and run the water system through until you see the water come out of the end cap. These usually screw off pretty easily. We get our system from Drip Depot, just like Home Depot, dripdepot.com. They have all different kinds of kits. All of these parts are extremely affordable. So if you wanted to upgrade your system and look at what they have extremely, really good customer service. They ship really fast, and again, it's inexpensive, and they'll send you everything in a box that you need to install your system. This is called an end cap, but the water would come out of the tube until you see it flushing out clear. Then you know it's flushed entirely. Then you're going to put this back on, screw it back on. I would get in the habit of flushing your system 3 to 4 times a year. You're welcome. Okay, so this other thing we're going to provide in the box is, anybody know what this is? Close. Alyssum. So it's a really beautiful annual that is going to attract your pollinators in. It also has a very fragrant smell. It smells like honey. It's a honey scented ground cover. So when you plant it, give it some space because it's going to spread out a little bit. It can absolutely be planted under something that is going to grow tall. So I would make sure it gets a lot of morning sun. Ideally, it wants at least 4 to 6 hours of morning sun. If it doesn't get any sun, it won't bloom the proper way. It may bloom just a little bit instead of full bloom for you. They are going to have cute little white and lavender colored flowers on them. So that's the other one we're providing for you. And dill. Dill is an old culinary herb that we're all familiar with, right? But in addition to having culinary benefits for you, did you know that it's also a natural deterrent in the garden and keeps bad guys away? So the more dill that you have planted, the less bugs you're going to see in your garden. This is a fantastic companion plant for all of your brassicas and anything that's growing in the garden. So the more dill you have growing, the safer it will become. And it also, in addition to deterring them, attracts your predator insects in, such as ladybugs, lacewings, and praying mantis. So, yes?
At what point are those insects present? Because I've had dill for quite some time and I haven't seen any like of those predator insects. Is it when they're flowering or?
Usually when they're flowering, yes. And that goes against everything that we know, because we're not supposed to let herbs flower if we want to consume them, right? Well, that's why you see my basil in full bloom. Because at this point I've had enough basil, I've had enough pesto this season that I don't, I'm good. I'm good. But the bees still need to eat. So that's why we have most of our basil in full bloom, is for their purpose only. Now, if you want to grow one for your pollinators and one for yourself, that's going to be the best suggestion I can give you, so that you can have one deadheaded all the time, keep your flowers at a minimum, consume it regularly, and have another one in full bloom to attract your good guys in. Yeah, that's going to be the best. Otherwise, you can just do half and half, because your dill tends to grow pretty full and big. Just use half of the plant for your sake and the other half for your predator insects. And a lot of times too, we don't even know that they're there.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so if you're not seeing a lot of infestations from the bad guys, that means they're there, usually. I always like to assume that nature's taking its course. When I don't see a lot of problems, you're doing something right, or the plants are all working within, doing what they're supposed to be doing and coexisting. The more diversity that you have in your garden, the happier the plants will be, and all of those insects are drawn to that, the natural biodiversity. So just incorporate new things, blooming herbs, more flowers, really colorful, fragrant flowers that are in season is the best way to attract them in. That's that whole purpose of that garden right there, is for our predator insects. We're going to walk through it here in a minute, and I'll show you exactly what I'm talking about, okay? Now, the worm tea, I wanted to talk about that really quick too. This is the best time to apply worm tea to your plants if you haven't yet. You also get 50% off of the worm tea cost when you attend one of my classes. If you cannot use the tea within 4 hours of purchase today, then just come back when you can, because the faster that you get this onto your plants, the more effective it is. We want you to use it within 4 hours of purchase. That's going to be really, really strong. The strength of it will be more increased than if you were to wait. So it's full of microbes. It will strengthen the leaves of your plants and protect them from getting frostbitten at night. So it's basically like putting a big giant coat on all your plants, including your citrus trees and your fruit trees. Yes?
For the worm tea, do you apply it directly to the foliage or in the soil?
Both. So you're going to apply it to the foliage, top to bottom. It can drip off. All the excess drips of tea will then access your soil, drip into your soil, and that's applying microbes into your soil in addition to a foliage treatment. Yes. We have ortho sprayers up in the barn available for sale, but any type of sprayer that attaches to your garden hose is... Doesn't have to be. You can put it in a spray bottle if you'd like to. However, I will say that it does get pretty clogged. So it's probably best to use a garden sprayer, or you can just put it in an old-fashioned water can such as this and pour it onto the plants just like this. It goes directly onto the foliage, all over the foliage. It's going to thicken your leaves and strengthen them and set them up for the cold, cold nights. It will protect them from freezing. Citrus trees absolutely love it. We just got done doing a full spray all the way down the citrus line on our citrus trees. If you were here a couple of months ago and saw how sad they were, they look like so much better now ever since we've done the worm tea spray, and it's finally cooled down.
Is it okay to put the worm tea on newly planted?
Absolutely. It also stimulates root growth. So it's very, 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 very good to apply it on your newly planted things, yes. You should dilute it, yeah. You can dilute it about 50% if you'd like to. You can use it full strength if you'd like to. Really up to you. You're gonna get way more out of it if you dilute it. If you're using it for your fruit trees, I would highly recommend diluting it. Absolutely. If you hook it up to your garden sprayer at home, put it on the highest setting so that all the product comes out, but the hose will obviously dilute it for you. Yeah, and then you're just gonna spray the trees from top to bottom. All the excess microbes will drip into the soil, and that's gonna protect it, strengthen it through the winter months. That can go on everything in the garden, including all of your flowering shrubs, your flowering vines, your old mulberry trees, your old grapevines, all that stuff. You can apply it on everything. Right, now's the perfect time to apply it. We also have, in addition to that, the BSFL, like I said before. Not really the best time to be fertilizing at high doses, especially on really frosty nights when we have frost warnings. You want to avoid a lot of high nitrogen products The nice thing about this is it does not have a high NPK. It's actually a really low, even balance of nutrients that evenly, sustainably releases to your roots of your plants. This is a root feeding fertilizer only, so it's a hydrolysate that's to be fed to the roots of the plants, not a foliage treatment, so don't get the two confused. This one has a much longer storage life, so if you purchase this, it can be stored up to 6 months, and it's equivalent to 5 gallons. So this one has to be diluted. In comparison to the worm tea, it doesn't have to be. This one has to be, and it's equivalent to 5 gallons. So you do it at a 1:5 ratio. There are instructions on the label here, but my favorite way to dilute it, if you get yourself a watering can such as this one, you pour in the concentrate up to that line right there, fill the rest up with water, and then this gets applied to all of your plants at the root base, such as tomatoes. They love it. So don't stop fertilizing your tomatoes. Don't stop fertilizing your eggplants. BSFL, it stands for Black Soldier Fly Larvae. Nutrient Plus.
That doesn't go on the leaf.
Nope, you're gonna feed it right down here at the base of your tomato plants. We feed ours every 6 weeks, regardless if it's cold out or not. Just like that, back and forth at the root ball. That's how you feed. Every 6 weeks. Citrus trees love it, fruit trees love it. Anything that's gonna bloom, anything that needs a high potassium, high phosphorus is gonna love it. Just so you guys understand the differences between the two. Okay, so who wants to go take a walk, see what we have growing in the field? All right, guys, I'm also gonna show you how to use this product in my hand. Anybody know what this is? This is frost cloth. Frost cloth will be used on the nights when it drops below 35 on your nightshades. Again, your nightshades include tomatoes, peppers, eggplant, potato. If you're growing any of those things and you think that it's okay to maybe try to see if you can get away with the survival, don't assume that they will, because you're going to learn the hard way that they got too cold and they might die. Now, we have a lot of peppers growing right behind us that are finally coming back from near death after the summer. And I would be really sad if they died during a frost warning. So pay attention to the frost warnings that the news provides for you. Also, the device in your pocket, your cell phone, usually has a weather app on it that will tell you if it's going to get below 35. On those nights, go outside and cover them up to ensure that they stay healthy through the winter nights, okay? Come on over, I'll show you how to do that. You're going to see a lot of different things growing in the garden, but this is where the peppers are. I'm going to show you real quick how to use frost cloth properly, because I think a lot of us are mistaken on how to use it to make sure that it actually does its job. If you use your frost cloth properly, it will actually insulate the soil temperature 7 degrees warmer than it is outside. Those 7 degrees is the survival temperature to keep your plants alive. It's actually a pretty significant amount of warmth to ensure that they stay alive. So, you know, if, say for instance, remember last year when it dropped into the 20s? You guys remember that? That was crazy, right? I couldn't even believe it. I've lived here for 25 years. I've never heard of it. But it got down to 27 degrees 3 nights in a row last year. And I got back after a long weekend and half of our garden looked like it died. It was really, really unfortunate. So we're gonna make sure that doesn't happen this year. So, you're gonna unroll it. You can buy frost cloth in large quantities at a store called the Arizona Bag Company. They're local. They're located off of 27th Avenue in Buckeye. They sell this in a giant roll if you have a large garden bed to cover, or your frost sensitive tropical trees also need to be covered from head to toe with a frost cloth. So it might be beneficial for you to buy it in bulk. If you don't want to get it from that company, you can also purchase it online. Make sure it's an actual frost cloth. People always ask me, can I use a bed sheet? Sure, if you use it correctly. It needs to be tucked all the way into the bottom of the soil. If you have a stake already holding up your pepper plant, that's a great way to source it to hold the frost cloth up. Otherwise, provide some stakes, because I've learned also that if the frost cloth gets too heavy, say from moisture in the nighttime, it can break the plants below it if it sits on them too long without a stake. So provide some stakes. You're going to put the frost cloth all the way over the plant to where it's actually touching the soil. And I can't stress that enough. Don't assume that it's okay if there's a couple of inches like this. That will actually counteract and could harm it if it stays elevated and it becomes windy in the night, or if it rains and this starts slapping the bottom of the plants. You're allowing all that cold rushing air to get trapped inside there now. So let's make sure that it's all the way down to the soil like this, and you can put some big pieces of wood or rocks to keep it from blowing in the night. That's the proper way to apply it. Yes? Anything tropical. Also, if it's a brand new citrus tree, and yours I wouldn't really consider it brand new, but okay, so brand new citrus trees means 3 years or younger are also frost sensitive the first couple winters of their life. They will get frostbitten. Don't assume that they won't, especially if it gets into the 20s. So it is really, really, really important to make sure you cover it up. Yes?
How do you know if they've already been, like, does the leaves start browning or?
So normally what happens is the cell membranes in their plant, in the leaves, the stem cells, they'll rupture when it gets too cold. And so what the result is a wilting look. It curls in and it looks wilted. It almost looks like it melted in a way. That is frostbite damage. Yeah, now if your plants get frostbitten, even if you went out and you covered them properly and you did everything I told you to do today, and they still get frostbitten, and it's possible, because if we have several nights that it's in the 20s, let's hope we don't, and I don't think that we will with the way things have been. But if we do, and your plants get frostbitten, leave the frost damaged leaves on until spring, and that's going to be the end of February. Then, end of February, early March, go out, remove all the excess damaged foliage, and it will provide new growth at that time for you. It should be able to regenerate itself if you wait until spring to remove those leaves. Don't remove them before the last frost warning. Wait until after, because they will just add additional protection.
What was the place that you said we could get the frost?
The Arizona BAG company. They're off of 27th Avenue in Buckeye. If you call them ahead of time, they'll have your order ready when you arrive. There's also, I think nowadays this time of year you can get it at any garden center as well. They tend to have it. I think even our neighbor sells it right now, because he sells all tropical inventory over there. Everything he sells in his nursery is frost sensitive. So he has it next door if you want to pick some up today on your way home. I don't see any frost warnings this week though on the weather, so I think you guys are safe. But just check, and it's always okay. It's always safe and a good idea to have some on hand if you're a tomato grower, or if you have peppers, or if you have something in the garden that you really don't want to lose. It's good to have it and be prepared before a frost warning comes. I would say, it's better to be safe than sorry, right? So that's how you're going to cover them up. In the morning when the sun comes up, you go out, take it off. Don't leave it on for longer than 48 hours. It needs to come off, yes.
So 2 questions. One, if you have like a greenhouse, like this plastic greenhouse is not like a real one, but do you still need to cover the plants? And then how do you cover plants that are in grow bags?
The same exact way as this, except for with the grow bag, it's nice. If you don't have a stake, even like a tomato cage would elevate it off of the plant, put the frost cloth up and over the grow bag, and then you can tuck it in underneath it, and that's going to insulate the soil too. Yeah, so the grow bags are nice. And grow bags tend to air out and lose their moisture a lot faster than soil does in a raised bed, so make sure that you don't let it dry out too long a period either. They need to stay evenly moist throughout the winter months. Not soggy wet, but evenly moist. Yeah, because a lot of us make the mistake of assuming that, I should just let the soil dry out because it's colder out. They need to dry out, but not all the way out, because that's when the roots can actually crack from being frozen. If they
I just had to cover the leaves, not the bags.
right in front of the wind dancer, huh? Yeah, they're showing off. Yeah, doing exactly what we don't want them to do. All right, so right behind you, I have a mixture of brassicas, but I did want you guys to look, since you're already facing this way, is our herb garden. There's a mixture of medicinal herbs in there, medicinal flowers in there, and they are mostly perennial, but some of them are annuals that are now seeding themselves. So Corey and I haven't really had to plant much this year, which has been nice. Everything is just coming back from the year before. So another reason to not till your garden is to have your perennials come back year after year. All you have to do is keep adding more organic matter, such as compost, mulch, worm castings, and all your perennials will come back year after year for you and be larger than they were the year before. So that's what that garden is. Right behind you, we have a mixture of brassicas. I'm going to show you how to plant your broccoli properly next. This is a row mixed of different types of brassica. We've got some kale there. We've got some broccoli there. Anybody here know what succession planting is? Yes. Yes, you're extending your harvest period by planting more of the same crop in stages so that you can have a longer harvest. So if you really love broccoli or you really love cabbage, if you planted some 6 weeks ago, now's the time to get out and plant some more so that you can continue to have it for a longer period of time. So that's what we've been doing this last week here at the Worm Farm, is succession planting all of our favorites, because we did go crazy and plant everything in October. It's already December. Next thing we know, it's going to be Christmas, and then it's going to be spring. So let's get our succession plantings done this weekend if possible. Broccoli should be spaced 12 to 18 inches apart at a minimum. Cauliflower a little bit more. If you're growing cauliflower and have learned that it's taking over the world, that's a good sign. It's supposed to get that big, but space it accurately so that you don't have limited mature size for the plant to grow into. If it feels crowded, it knows that it's supposed to stay compacted so you won't get a real big, beautiful crown on it if it doesn't have the space to grow into its full mature size. So at a minimum, 18 inches on a cauliflower. Broccoli can be spaced a little closer, 12 to 18. 2 feet's better if you have this space. All right, so that's going to put me way over here. You want to plant it directly towards your drip, directly next to your drip tape so that it can get the hydration that is required. The hole should be dug the same depth as the nursery container. You should have more than one plant inside there as well. It's very important to make sure that they get separated before planting. Otherwise, if you plant them this close together, one will dominate the other and they won't ever grow to their mature size. So let's just help them out by going ahead and separating them and then planting them 12 to 18 inches apart, okay? So I'm gonna go ahead and dig my holes first. The castings that you're going to get provided can be pinched in the hole to provide some extra nutrients if you'd like. They get separated just like that. Really simple. One in each hole.
So the worm castings and worms help like the transplant shock?
They help stimulate root growth, correct, yes. And then a little bit extra right around the base, and then we're going to kick the water on and let that run. And that's going to be the proper way to plant your broccoli. So remember what the spacing is. At a minimum. What about for your cauliflower? Okay, awesome. Now, do you guys know when to expect to harvest it? yeah, be patient. It takes a while, and we can always peek and see. I love going to peek on my brassicas and checking them out. And their leaves want to cover them up, especially with your cauliflower. The leaves are protecting it from maturing too fast, so don't unfold your cauliflower leaves too soon. But your broccoli crowns will start to poke their little heads out. And know that with broccoli, you're going to get more than one crown. Your cauliflower usually only will provide one. They're one and done. Broccoli, you can get up to 6. So harvest the big one in the middle first, and then you're going to cut it at an angle when you harvest it. That'll direct your energy downward into providing more crowns at the bottom. You should get at least 6 before the plant is done. And then when it's all said and done, go ahead and just cut it right at the soil base. Leave the roots in the ground to decompose. Your worms and your microbes will eat those roots for you. No need to pull it all the way out if you don't want to. Okay, yes? Calendula, another one of our favorites. It's edible, it's amazingly beautiful, and it attracts our good guys and keeps the bad guys away. Yeah. The flower is edible. It's, yeah, it's really delicious.
What do you do with the leaves? You eat those or no?
You can infuse them into a tea. The entire plant is edible and it's extremely good for your hygiene. A lot of facial products are made from calendula. Yeah, it's really, really good for you. Hyacinth bean. That is mostly grown for pollination reasons. They are edible, but it's really fibrous and it's not really recommended. It's not a bean to be grown to consume. I really just grow it because it's aesthetically pleasing and it loves the heat. So that is left over from the summer.
And that Malabar spinach is crazy. Isn't that what it's called?
Yes,
It goes crazy.
it goes crazy. It's now in seed production, so we're gonna let it produce its seeds, and then that will come out. And then in about a month or two, that will be nothing but snap peas there on that trellis. Snap peas love the cold. The colder it is, the happier snap peas are. And in order to keep them producing throughout the winter months, harvest them often. It's kind of hard not to, because when you're out there gardening, you see those snap peas dangling from the vines, you're gonna wanna eat them. So just make sure the more you harvest, the more that they'll produce. Same with your lettuces. Your lettuces should be planted now and harvested as often as you wanna eat it. That's going to prevent it from bolting and becoming bitter. So get out there and eat that lettuce as often as you want to eat it. Now I'll show you a proper way to harvest it so that you can get a couple heads out of it before it's done. We had to cover our lettuce up with tulle because it seems like the birds love the lettuce as much as we do. So as you can see here, we've got it all the way covered up. This allows sunshine and oxygen in and keeps the birds off of our plants so that we can actually harvest enough lettuce to have a salad if we want to. So this will just be lifted up and over when we want to harvest our lettuce. When harvesting your lettuce leaves, you're going to cut it about 1 inch above the soil. That's more than 1 inch. That's going to allow it to produce some new leaves, a whole new head of lettuce for you if you allow that much space. So don't pull it out entirely. Or you can just take the leaves off that you need to use. If you're just using it for a sandwich, for instance, you would just take a few leaves off from the outer part of the plant, not the inner. That will keep the head of the lettuce producing. If you want to have a whole salad, you'll harvest it here with a pair of pruners. You're going to leave that much in the soil. It will grow right back for you. You can do that up to 3 times before it becomes bitter. Okay?
Does it get bitter if you take it one leaf at a time? Does it still continue?
What kind of lettuce?
It can. It can if it's been in the ground too long. Yeah. This is a butterhead skyphos lettuce. It's also known as like a red butterhead. Yeah. We're going to go up that way next. Anybody know what we're looking at here? Yes, onions and garlic. Right now is the proper time to be planting your onions and garlic if you haven't started yet. They also act as a natural deterrent and a wonderful companion plant for all of your other veggies in the garden. They just do a fabulous job, and garlic takes a really long time to grow. So if you pop in some garlic in between your susceptible plants, that will keep the bad guys off of them. It will continue to grow and nourish your soil. By the time you're all said and done with your cauliflower and broccoli, your garlic will then be ready to harvest, which will be around May if you plant it now. You can get seed garlic online, or you can buy organic, certified organic garlic from, say, Sprouts, and simply plant it that way as well. Just make sure it's organic, because if it's not organic, it'll be sprayed with an inhibitor and it won't grow properly for you, okay? But yeah, all onions, so your red onions, your white onions, they can be planted by seed if you want to. They take a way longer time to grow them by seed, or you can grow them by transplant. And then leeks, shallots, chives, all of those are safe to put in the ground now. And garlic chives happen to be one of my favorite perennials. They taste amazing. They are so easy to grow, require 0 fertilizer, very little water, and come back year after year after year. That over there is garlic chives, and we harvest regularly, and they still taste amazing. The taste doesn't get altered. Say sometimes if something stays in the ground too long and it doesn't taste good anymore, that doesn't really necessarily happen with those types of chives. They just do really fabulous year after year after year, as long as you're harvesting them often. Over here we've got some tomatoes growing, and I wanted to show you real quick the other thing that's in your box is a fava bean. This is what to expect if you're growing tomatoes outside of a raised bed. They will tend to get much taller. They should be trellised vertically. You can incorporate beans, anything in the legume family with them. Who knew tomatoes look like that? Just kidding, it's a green bean. So we plant our green beans with our tomatoes because they fix the soil. They release nitrogen into the soil, which the tomatoes suck out pretty regularly and quickly. So if you companion plant them next to each other, they do a fabulous job of making sure that the nutrients are given to the plant properly. So we've got a couple different types of tomato there, and you're going to see different types of beans incorporated next to one another there. This is a whole line of fava bean, and then we did some snap peas directly sown by seed in the row in front of that. Fava bean is a dry bean that you can save. If you want to grow it primarily just to fix your soil, you should, because it really, really does an awesome job of fixing your soil for you. If you've ever had a compacted area in your garden that you've been struggling with, the fava bean will help fix that soil for you. And they smell really nice. Fava, you're going to get one in your gift box today. Yes. Yeah, so I just wanted to show you the difference here and how I grow them next to the tomatoes. And we're going to go right back the way that we came, and I'll give you that gift box. Oh, and then right now also, guys, is the proper time to be planting your spring bulbs. So if you want to grow spring flowers, for instance, like daffodils and irises and ranunculus, those all should be planted now in the winter time to have those spring bulbs ready for you, those spring flowers. Yeah.